Hi everyone, this is Coach Yanis from Olympus Pro Performance Coaching. I hope you're all doing well, especially under these kind of crazy conditions at the moment in the whole country. So I mentioned earlier this week that I'm going to make a video that I'm going to explain the principles of program designing and how they can actually help you become better on the bike. And that's because recently I've watched a couple of videos from random people basically saying that if you do the XYZ exercise, it will make you a better rider, which is not true. So I decided to make a video which actually will help you understand a bit more what's going on behind the scenes when we design programs. Because the reason is simple: an individual exercise doesn't make you any better on the bike, it just makes you better on that specific exercise. So if you train for squats, you become better on the squats. But if you train with a reason behind the squats and you know why you're doing it, then it can make you better on the bike. So enough said, let's go now into the presentation basically, which I prepared, and you will be able to understand a bit more about what we're talking about. So the first thing that you need to understand when we're talking about the principles of program designing is that your goals will determine the methods. So that's the first thing you need to always ask yourself, which we discussed this before. What's your goal and why? Okay, so once you know your goals, and that could be anything, that could be literally just to get fitter and stronger, so you will be able basically to handle 30 minutes of moto, or simply you're coming back from an injury. Yeah, so let's say you unfortunately broke your leg, and after 3 months you start basically doing the rehab. So you want to get this leg again stronger, and obviously to increase the symmetry between your two ribs. So that's another goal. Yeah, so in that case, what you want to make sure is that in the training we reflect your goals, yeah, and that they work harmonically. So on the principles of program designing, the first thing we have is the frequency. When the frequency means basically how many times do you train per week. Then we have the overload, which means while you train over the months or over the weeks, you want to increase basically the overload. So it's the weight overload. So you have basically progressive overloading. And that's because once you start training, and let's say if you do a program for over 4 to 5 weeks, then your body starts adapting on that training stimulus. And then after a while, you just reach the plateau, which means basically you have no any further progress. So that's why we want always to have progressive overloading, because that way we make sure that your body continues basically progressing, and you pass then to the next phase. The next thing is the intensity, which basically is how hard you train. We don't train hard every single day, and that's a mistake that I see very often, especially in motocross, because motocross riders, they're such tough lads basically. If you let them on their own, they're just going to always reach the extreme. And that's something that I've seen with my riders as well. Before we start training together, the most common thing they used to do is basically get on the rower and just basically smash it for 5 to 10K every single day. Which obviously that can reach overtraining, or not training basically properly at all, which means you're just wasting your time really. Then is specificity, which means basically that whatever, as I said before, whatever we do during the training, it has to reflect what we want to do as an outcome. So whatever you do, make sure it's specific to your sport. And I don't say specific to the sport, like, for example, let's say if you need some balance, start balancing on a bowser ball and doing circus stuff, because that basically will end up to be a shit show. When I say specific things, it means that make sure that whenever you train because you want to adapt basically better on your sport. So you train the movement, you don't train the exercise. Yeah, if you train the exercise, you become better on the exercise, you don't become better on your sport. Then we have reversibility. Reversibility means pretty much that sometimes we need to step back. Yeah, so reversibility is more like a regression. It's the same thing like progression, but the opposite. So and that's because sometimes we just need to step back if you're coming back from an injury, or if something just happens anyway, and we just need to regress a bit the program and then move forward again. And it not necessarily means that you need to regress the whole program. You might just need to regress an exercise or regress a specific part of the program. Then we have recovery. On the recovery means that's something that a lot of people, again, a lot of riders ignore. Recovery means that you definitely need to have some recovery days on your program. That doesn't mean that you're doing completely fuck all. It means also that you can actually recover actively. And recover actively, you just can do, for example, let's say some mobility work, or you can do some flexibility work, or both, or some just, light spinning on the bike, or just simply just rest completely, just do nothing for the day. Then we have the progression. Basically means that if you do, let's say, a squat, and that squat is a goblet squat because you couldn't do at the beginning of the program a back squat, then the next thing is basically do a back squat. So you're just progressing it, and that's just a simple example. Doesn't mean that you're doing exactly what as I said. Yeah, you just progress the exercise to something that is more advanced, and that again, that doesn't mean that you definitely need to do that. There's plenty of different ways to do it. It's just the word itself, progression, means that you progress the exercise. Time is very important of the workout. Could be, could be 40 minutes, could be 60 minutes. It depends what we're looking to achieve. It could be just 30 minutes, but it's about the duration and the type, what type of training you do. And that's basically there's different types of exercise of training that you can do, but it could be a simple strength training, the traditional strength training, which is linear. It could be an undulating system. It could be CrossFit. It's what type of exercise you're doing. It could be conditioning. Again, it depends what we want to do. It's always about this big word. It depends. On the next slide now, what we see is the performance pyramid. So in the performance pyramid, you see all the steps pretty much that you need to follow in order to be able to improve your performance properly. The first phase is the foundation, which is the mobility. Okay, mobility and flexibility, I would say. And the reason is, if you can't move properly, especially as an athlete, then if you move too quickly up steps, basically, which is the strength, power, etc., the possibility of getting injured or have gaps basically within your performance is big. So if you can't move properly, then you don't move in the next phase. Then the next phase is strength, where we're doing basically all the gains. And when we say strength, we're not talking only about heavy weights. We're talking about you actually get proper strong, but at the same time also have some strength endurance. So we also condition the muscles so they can handle the stress, the pressure for longer, especially if you're doing 30 minutes motos. And then we have the power and speed and skill. On this phase, we're not lifting basically 100 or 95 or 80% basically of your max rep. We're moving about the 65-70% is where we're trying to improve your actual power, to your actual explosive power, and be able to be fast, to have good speed. And obviously your program becomes also more and more specific to motocross. And then another thing we do as well, we reduce the actual gym sessions, and we increase more the technical side, which is basically the riding. We still monitor very close what you're doing, but the intention falls more basically into the motocross. And in combination with all of these things, from mobility all the way up to speed and skill, we always do conditioning as well. So the program always implements as well some sort of conditioning, where basically make sure that you improve your fitness, the fitness side of your training as well. Now, one of the most popular questions I'm getting is, so what kind of exercises? What's the magic exercise that that we should use in order to create an effective program? Well, there's no such a magic exercise. As I said before, it's more about the whole recipe of the program. And on the next slide, I'm going to explain you why I use the big three and the variations of the big three in order to prescribe program for my athletes. The so-called big three refers to bench press, squat, and deadlift. And these three movements are called this mainly because they work several muscle groups, and for overall strength and mass gains, they just can't be beat. Now, just to make it clear, these exercises are not for everyone, and that's because they demand great mobility and technique. However, if we use variations of the exercises, then we can achieve great outcome as well. So it's obviously up to your coach to do it properly, but the reason I refer this exercise is because if you have a good idea of what you need to do and what your program basically should include in order to actually have some proper strength gains, definitely your program should include some of these exercises. I hope you found this video quite informative, and if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments or direct message me. And if you like what you watched, feel free to share with your fellow riders and friends, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram, YouTube and Facebook in order to grow up a bit more the community and help more riders to achieve their goals. Until the next time, cheers.